I'm BrianVee, and this is Why We Work. Today, I have the great pleasure of speaking with Brenden Kumarasamy. Brenden is a business transformational consultant at IBM, but he's also the founder of MasterTalk, where he helps people speak with others to communicate, to get our message out there. He shows us how to get over the jitters, how to gain confidence in what we say. And today I want to find out how he does that, how he can help us all communicate better. Join me in my conversation today with Brenden Kumarasamy. I'm BrianVee, and this is Why We Work. Today I have the great pleasure of speaking with Brenden Kumarasamy. Good evening, young man.
Good evening, Brian. How are you?
I'm doing wonderfully well. What, catch you off guard? You're a young man. You should
No,
embrace
usually
it.
people don't say good evening. They just go yo or hey.
Yeah, I know. I this is this is my tag now. Like, good evening, good morning, young man or young lady. In your case, young man. Brenden, there's a lot on the internet about you. I could find a lot. I found a lot, and I'm learning a lot. And the more I learn about you, the more interested I am. Can you give us a snapshot of who you are? Not too much, just a little bit of what you're doing right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm the founder of MasterTalk. It's a YouTube channel I started to help people with their communication skills. So I guess that's the snapshot.
Well, that's perfect. Brenden, what was your first job? What was the first thing that you did even as a young teenager?
The first job.
Very first, working like you're out of Montreal, so I can't pick something. Making poutine. I'm not sure. Like,
Man, don't make me hungry, man. I haven't had a poutine in like 3 months. Quarantine's been tough to me. But no, I would say the first job I had, and I guess I'm one of those privileged people, even if I grew up impoverished, is my first job was actually in government. Yeah.
okay, I had a couple. I'm like, what? So your first job was in government. I actually saw some of your bio. It was very interesting. So what did you do and how old were you?
I was 16, I
Well,
believe.
I mean, it's still young. It's still young to be working at 16 is pretty good. The the
Yeah.
the difference is working in the government. Most people are McDonald's or delivering papers or something. So what was this position?
Yeah, I got lucky. I guess that's one way of putting it. I worked for Correctional Services Canada.
Okay.
So basically it's like the department in Canada that manages the jails and the but I was on the bureaucracy side, like I was on the admin side. So
Mm-hmm.
there was an office in a suburb near Montreal and I just did paperwork all day. Pretty much just
What?
listened to Korean music all
Yeah,
day and that's it.
that's funny. Why did you get that job? And I guess how did you get that job as well? So what got you out of the house at 16 to work and how did you get that position?
Yeah, for me, 16, it was mostly just to do summer internship. I was graduating from high school. I was looking to go to CSHEP soon, which is college. For those who
Mm-hmm.
don't know, it's just a step
First
before
year,
university.
first year. Where's that offered? Ontario and Montreal,
That's actually
basically.
just Quebec, so
Is
that's
it
just
just
Montreal.
Quebec?
You got it.
So you get an additional year. So it's almost like an extension of high school, but it's pre-college or university, and it prepares you to whatever path you may choose.
You
So at
got it.
16, you kept that job right up until you went to CJEP.
You got it. I actually only had it for 4 months. It was just a summer internship. They wanted to keep me for the part time, but I was like, nah, I gotta study. So I left.
So why did you get it? Like, this is part why we work, why people do the things they do. Was it a family influence saying, okay, Brenden, get out of the house and get some money, or you had your own desires to work? You were starting to think about your career then?
Yeah, it was. You're absolutely right. It's definitely the second I wanted to go out there and started making money because my parents, and that's what's fascinating, I guess, about your show is everyone's got different cultural values and how they live and mend their house. So let's say a lot of American families are like, we're gonna kick you out at like 18, whereas my parents were like, you're not allowed to work until you have a degree. It's kind of like the complete opposite end of the spectrum.
Well, you mentioned Korea and your enjoyment of Korean K-pop music. That sums up Korean culture in that and it's not all, but most students are not allowed or are discouraged of getting a job until they're finished university, which from you would understand in Canada, from my perspective, some people who live in Canada, that's very foreign. The idea, like, what do you mean? I need to get a job at 14 or 13 or do something or get out of the house to keep sanity. But in some cultures, it's very much appointed for people to only get their first job after they've graduated from university.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, it's very interesting to see how different cultures operate. Like in
But
my
it's
case,
wonderful too,
yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely.
in your case.
Absolutely. Yeah, like so in my case, like even today I have a pretty good job. Like my day job is very good. I still live with my mom,
Nice.
right? I never moved on. I don't think I'll ever move on until I'm married when in like 7, 10 years from now.
Well, how old are
So
you, Brendan, if you don't mind me
I'm
asking?
no, of course I don't mind. You're such a nice guy. I'm 24.
Well, yeah, so you're pretty young, and that's what I was thinking. And I didn't technically move out of my house until I got married. Like no matter, I had many jobs before that, like before getting married or from my youth, but I really didn't break away from my mom until my late 20s, like almost 30, when I really first moved to Korea and got married. So that's how that worked. So what did you take in university?
I took
And
accounting.
and why did you take it? So it seems for and I think your story is encouraging because not all people have a plan. Not all people are getting government jobs at 16 and wanting to go work and kind of a less bumpy ride on how they choose things. And then you're picking accounting. Did you have a plan? Like you mentioned, MasterTalk. Is that part of the plan? Were you thinking that early about your career, or are you still trying to figure that out now, which is not
Right. So
far removed?
of course. So the answer is a bit of both in many ways. So definitely the plan was in place. So when I was 12, I made the decision to be an accountant. And the reason, and this is advice I would give for anyone who's looking for a job and thinking about the career path, is I call it the process of elimination. It's a lot easier to figure out what you don't want to do in life versus what you do. So if you go through all the careers, you can figure out exactly what you want to be focused on. So in my case, it was an easy decision. I was good at math and I was bad at everything else. So being an accountant made the most sense. And I just never changed my mind for a decade.
So and you went to McGill, did you not?
I went to Concordia. But for the record,
Concordia.
I did get accepted to McGill.
You did get. It was one of my choices as well. I really wanted to go to Montreal and to go to school. While you were in school, were you thinking where you wanted to go, what you wanted to do? What was on your mind? And again, for listeners, it's the idea of the thought process of people from high school to university. For myself, it was not so clear cut. Not I switched degrees, but what was it for yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm kind of a crazy person. Like I knew I wanted to be a senior executive at a company when I was 19. Right.
Nice.
So when I went to university, I said, okay, I need to be a senior executive at an IBM, at a McKinsey, at one of these big companies so that I can have the income to retire my mom and be in a position that when I have kids in my 30s that I don't have to struggle in the same way that my parents did. So to answer your question, essentially, MasterTalk was never in the picture.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It was just I never wanted to be an entrepreneur. That was the last thing that was on my mind. I thought entrepreneurship was for crazy people who couldn't get a six-figure corporate job. I was like, no, let me get into corporate. So that was the rationale at the beginning, and of course, as the story unfolded, I changed my mind.
So, what is your title then, or what is your present job? I know you have it listed as a business transformational consultant at IBM. Is that what you're presently doing as well, alongside with MasterTalk?
That's correct. So I'm a technology consultant there. Essentially, implement tech for different clients, and that's my full-time gig.
Okay. So, how long have you been working there?
I'm going almost on 2 years in April.
So, obviously, you have a career, you have a job, you have a source of income, but where does MasterTalk and how did that start to develop? And what is your plan for that, or even that side of your communication business?
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to expand. So essentially what happened was when I was in university, I did these things called case competitions. It's a lot like professional sports, but for nerds. So other guys my age are playing sports like footy or cricket or, you know, baseball or basketball. I was never into that stuff. I did presentations competitively. And a lot of universities, especially in Canada, since you're from there, are big case competition schools like Dalhousie in Nova Scotia, and many of the other Canadian universities would go up against each other in presentations. I know this is bizarre for those who
Was
people are listening.
Acadian was in a shout out to Acadia where I went. Was Acadia in any of these competitions of which I obviously missed the boat on?
No, but I'm familiar with the university, but no, they weren't a
It was
part. It was
Dow.
mostly
Oh,
mostly Dal.
Dalhousie. It's always a competition between Dow and Acadia.
Yeah,
Or
it's mostly
SUNY.
it was Dal and Saint FX
Mm-hmm,
mostly.
mm-hmm.
Yeah, so those people would compete in those things. So anyways, I was crazy, and the reason I did these competitions was to get a job in consulting out of business school. I wanted to work at McKinsey. I wanted to work at these Accenture, these consulting firms. Once again, no master talk here. It was really just let's get this corporate job, get out of poverty, because I knew if I got that job, I would be successful. So after I did a stint at PricewaterhouseCoopers and I realized I didn't want to be an accountant anymore, I went after that corporate job in consulting, and I got it. And that's when the idea for Master Talk came. Because after I got out of poverty, I just said, okay, so what do I do with my life now? I'm going to climb up this ladder. I'm going to make the money that I need to sustain myself. What's next for me? And what I realized in the 3 years that I was obsessing over case competitions is what happened through a random set of experiences is I ended up becoming the youngest professional speech coach in the world.
That's a good title. Brendan, I heard or I read something about you remembering putting your first video. And as I just mentioned, I went to Acadia University where I remember Communications 101, Communications 1 class and us having to present. And I do not remember. I wasn't a very good student, maybe a parent that's quite apparent, but also in high school, I don't remember doing any presentations. And so when university came along and we had to do a presentation, I was absolutely mortified. I was terrified. And I recall to this day, and I've said it on here a couple of times, maybe at least just once, that while doing my presentation, I think I did it on Alexander Keats. Those who like it a lot. Beer. Just they gave you any topic so you can learn to feel comfortable. And my knees were shaking, and I looked over to Kathleen Martin James, who was my communications professor. Said, "My legs are shaking," and there's 40 people in the class. She said, "Shh, just keep going." And I recall I read where you were a little fearful of doing your first YouTube video. Can you bring us back to that and re, I guess answer the question of why do you think people are so fearful of communicating and talking with people, which is one of the most common things we do, natural things we do.
Absolutely. And the short answer to this, Brian, is it makes sense, right? And the reason it makes sense is if you think about it, all the presentations we've given in our lives are mandatory. We don't wake up one morning and say, hey, Brian, you want to get some breakfast and present all day? I think I'm probably one of 4 people in Canada who says that,
Mm,
right? So because of that, when we see presentations, 3 things happen when we do them. One, we never get to pick the topic in university, in college,
mm-hmm,
in high school.
mm-hmm,
We're always presenting to students who don't really care.
mm-hmm,
And 3, we're always presenting to teachers who don't have time to coach us, unfortunately.
mm-hmm,
And this behavior gets repeated on and on until we're led to believe that public speaking is a chore. It's like doing the dishes or
mm-hmm,
mowing the lawn, when public speaking in reality is about making a difference. It's about sharing an idea that matters. But because our frame of mind is off, we start to shake, we start to get worried. So a question I always like to ask people to reflect on is the following. How would the world change if you were an exceptional communicator?
mm-hmm,
If you can find an answer to that question, you'd say, wait a second, if I became a great communicator, I could have better relationships with my wife. I could be a better podcast host. I could have
mm-hmm,
better conversations with my friends. And that's when you start to think of communication more as something you need to master rather than an afterthought or a chore. And that's how you reframe your perspective. And that's what happened with me with the YouTube channel as well. Even if I had so many presentations under my belt, when it came to putting myself out there in the public eye in a permanent way, I kind of freaked out a bit. I said, oh, I don't want to put up videos. So why did I do it? I did it because there are people out there who can't afford communication coaches, like 16-year-old girls or 15-year-old boys that nobody's making video content for on
Mm.
communication. So I wanted to be that person for them, and then things just kind of went crazy after that.
So I guess depending on what you want to talk about, what you prefer to talk about, whether IBM or MasterTalk, what is a process that you go through with both of these positions that you have? So in a week, or maybe COVID is a little bit different for you, so you're not doing all the things that you normally would be doing, maybe with IBM. I'm not sure if businesses are slower, but what is a process that you go through? Because you have a lot of content on YouTube channel, and I urge people to go check it out because it looks very professional as well. So you're not just throwing things together. And as heard you mention your first few videos, the production was not as good, which I didn't see. It's just something you commented on, but you seem to have revamped it and you have yourself a really good channel there now.
I appreciate that. And that's why I recommend people think about. At the beginning, there is no process. You really just got to get into the habit of creating. Like the
Mhm.
first year, I didn't edit a single video. I just took out a phone and just did videos, and they weren't really good. But over time, since I was an expert in my field, I eventually got good on camera, and I was able to mold my thoughts much more effectively
Mhm.
on video, and that's what led to what I do today, and the outcome that we see with MasterTalk. But yeah, I'm happy to walk you through that process. So for IBM, pretty simple. Client comes up to us, they want a system to be implemented. Then we spend the next 6 months to 18 months, depending on the situation, implementing it. So you host workshops for people, you figure out what they want in the system, you fix it, you reiterate until you go live. Pretty simple. Actually, it's not that simple, but it gives you an overview. But for Master Talk, there's kind of two angles. So the first angle is how do I create videos? And the second angle is how do I coach clients? So the angle for the YouTube videos is I outsource everything. So essentially my best friend does everything from the production. He films me and I give him a big chunk of my personal salary for him to do that. And then I optimize the video and I just sit there on the camera. I look pretty and I present. That's the first part. For coaching clients, I have a whole framework that we can go into. But the
Mhm.
general idea is you want to get them one win. And then as they get more and more wins, the mindset changes and they think they can be an incredible speaker. And once that barrier has been passed, that's it. Then they think they're going to be the best and they become the best.
What is some difficulties that you may face in the work that you do, and some satisfactions that you get from the work, maybe more so on your master talk side?
Yeah, for sure. Happy to comment on this. So I would say for me, the most satisfying part of the job is the impact. I think I'm kind of like Robin Hood in many ways. You know, to get coaching fees from the top 1% of the people who can afford me, so I can make better videos for the 99% who can't. Right. So I think that's something that I'm really passionate about, that I really care about. Like conversations like this. People have access to me; they can listen to this knowledge base without paying anything, and it helps them get better and improve. That's one part. Challenge, there's definitely a lot. I would say the biggest challenge I had at the beginning was getting coaching clients because I was very young at the time. Actually, I still am, but when I started, I was 22. So it's
Mhm.
really hard to get executive clients who have worked at a company longer than you've been alive, and you giving them advice on how to improve. But I got lucky with a couple of relationships that I built, and I was able to gain that trust. But I would say the advice I give people is show, don't tell. Don't tell people that you're a coach. Don't tell people you're a podcaster. Show them the result. So what I used to do when I started, I used to email people I wanted to work with, and I wouldn't email them saying, "Here's a YouTube video. I'm a coach." No, no, no. I would say, "You suck." Like I watched your keynote, and I found on YouTube, and I found 48 mistakes. Here are the mistakes. Bye. So they always reply with, "How much do you charge?" And then I fix those 48 mistakes for them.
Is there a skill that's great? I like how you approach that. Is there a skill that you've had to develop over the last 4 years to be in the position you're in that will, letting us know what this skill is will help listeners start to develop or work on the skill, regardless of how old they are?
Yeah, absolutely. Do you mean like a life skill in general that I
Well,
think is important?
not necessarily life skill, a skill in the art of communication.
Absolutely, sure. So here's one skill is how do you practice for presentations? Most people don't do it well, don't know how to do it in the right way. So let me kind of explain it this way. Public speaking is like a jigsaw puzzle, Brian. You know those pieces you kind of put together in a puzzle?
Mhm.
So if I asked you, let's say you're doing a puzzle with your wife or your family or something, which pieces would you start with first and why?
And I'm going to answer this question. I usually start with the outer border, so I know where my boundaries are.
Absolutely. And that's the right answer, right? It's easier to find the corner pieces. So
Hmm.
the question we need to ask ourselves is, why don't we do that in public speaking?
Hmm.
We have a classroom, boardroom, conference room. So what do? We start with the middle. We shove a bunch of content, get to the presentation, we ramble through the entire thing, we get to the last slide, and it sounds something like this. As yeah, so thanks. That's probably 97% of all the presentations I hear. But there's an easy way to fix this. Treat your public speaking presentations like a jigsaw puzzle.
Hmm.
Start with the edges first. Practice your introduction 50 times, not 3 times, not 5 times. Do it 50 times. 50 seems like a big number. It actually isn't. Your introduction's a
Hmm.
minute.
Hmm.
Take an hour to do it. Same thing with the conclusion. What's a great movie with a terrible ending? Last time I checked, terrible movie. Same thing. 50
Hmm.
times the conclusion. In 2 hours of practice, not 2 days, not 2 weeks, not 2 years, 2 hours. You'll look at your presentation and go, wow, I'm actually really good at this introduction, this conclusion. And then with that newfound confidence, then you dive for the middle. And then
Hmm.
after you dive for the middle, realize that if you're working on a 2,000-piece puzzle, why would you do that alone?
Hmm.
Work with a team, get a community together, get some people who are excited to learn this. Maybe join a Toastmasters club and master the puzzle.
I've heard of Toastmasters a couple times, and the last time I heard of it, I was going to ask the person to let us know or delve a little bit further. Could you let us know what a Toastmasters class is?
Yeah, of course. Are clubs. So every city in the world, pretty much, there's Toastmasters there. So essentially, what it is, it's a gathering of people where you practice your communication skills every week, and it's also very cheap. It's like $80 a year or something Canadian. So that might translate to different currencies across the
Hmm.
world, but it's relatively inexpensive in general. And what's great about Toastmasters is because of that, you have that community. So if you don't know anyone that wants to practice communication with you, you just go to the club and figure it out. But then, of course, if you have more budget and you want to get there faster, the results, then you hire a coach. But for most people, I generally recommend to start at a Toastmasters club.
So there's no other connection between the people except that they want to be better communicators.
That's correct. And then they end up building a bond together. It's like being a part of like a sports club. It's
Okay.
just for public speaking.
Brenden, how are you staying so productive? So you have your full-time job, you're also doing this, which, editing and producing and all of that is a whole other realm of it. How are you staying productive? What's getting your feet on the ground?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say for me, the biggest thing is understanding how to prioritize your goals and then prioritizing your time around those goals. So I have a rule where I can't have more than 3 goals at any given time. So I know where my energy is, where I need to focus. So one of those goals, of course, growing the YouTube channel, right? Another goal is, doing something else, building a business, whatever. And then from those goals, you prioritize your time and your activities around that. So that's the first part. So that way, you're only focused on activities that drive the needle on those 3 things so that when those goals get knocked out, you can replace them with a new set. That's the way that I think about productivity. The other thing is that understanding that balance means different things for different people, right? So for me, balance is something that's very different from everyone else. What I encourage people to do is to really define that for yourself. Does that mean 3 days with the kids? Does that mean one day with the kids? Does that mean 3 hours of, does that mean 3 date nights with your significant other? Does that mean once a month? Like, I don't think there's a right or wrong answer here. I just think for me in my stage of life, just because, I live with my mom, a lot of my things are taken care of for me and I'm really lucky. I can just focus on working all the time and executing what I want because that's my priority. So it's about figuring out what your priorities are and aligning the activities around your day around those 3, and that's how you stay really productive.
Brenden, how proud is your mom of you?
Not many
Like,
people ask me that.
what? I mean, when I was 24 years old, not that my mom would have been proud no matter what I did, but you're 24 and you said you started this at 22, you were working for the government at 16. I mean, I'm sure you have your faults and your quirks and your mom's like, "Oh, Brenden," but I think she's probably pretty proud of you, and I think you let your mom know. I said she's doing a pretty good job.
You're too kind. Yeah, my mother is a sweetheart. I'm really blessed to have her in my life. So yeah, I owe a lot of my success to her, honestly.
Thinking of people who are getting into work, you were getting into the government position at 16, but other people get in other positions, which are perfectly fine. And people change careers as well. Do you have a tip for just getting into work? And the hope is to encourage people to work. But as they pick that first job, or maybe they're hesitant, they're scared to change the position that they want to change into, or they're just a little nervous about getting their first job. Do you have any tips for them?
100%. The biggest mistake I see people make with the job search is they think it's a single player game. They go, I need to get a job, so I need to apply to 50 places, and then hopefully I get something. I think that's the wrong approach. That will exhaust you and won't get you a job
It's
most of the
probably the
time.
most common way people do it.
Correct. Here's the tip that I suggest. This is the way I've navigated, because a lot of the jobs I've gotten in my life are extremely competitive. Maybe 2% of the talent pool actually get an offer to work at PwC or IBM or any of those other companies. So here's the advice. The advice is treat it like a team player game. Partner up with 3 people who want the exact same job as you. I know that sounds very counterintuitive,
That's pretty
but
good.
yes, partner with the
That's a
same,
challenge. That's a challenge.
right? And I'll explain why so I can prove my point so people can see what I mean here. So pick 3 people that you care about, like you trust, that your best friends, like you do or dies, people that are just as motivated as you, that want the same job as you, ideally, or just people in general,
Hmm.
and go after the jobs together. Apply to the same jobs, interview at the same positions, and train together. Why do I recommend this? Because any person who treats the job search process like a team player game will always beat anyone who's treating it like a single player. Because single player means you're one mind working on your own. The other team's got 4 minds constantly coaching each other, and they're keeping each other motivated. They're eating pizza together, they're having fun. And you know what the best part of that group is? If I'm in that group and you're in that group and 2 other people, you all get jobs except for me. Most people think that's a losing game. They're like, Brenden, you just helped all these people, you didn't get a job. But here's what they miss, Brian. Who are you going to recommend the next time there's an opening? Are
Your
you going to
teammate.
recommend,
Yeah.
yeah, are you going to recommend some random schmuck? Are you going to recommend the guy who stayed up every night with you, bought you pizza, encouraged you?
Hmm.
And that's why I'll never be unemployed.
Especially if in that case, if it was just a numbers game, they were only hiring 2 guys, but the next quarter they're going to hire 2 more or
Exactly.
girls.
But
Yeah,
here's the
that's a great
best
way.
part that I would love to encourage people. Anyone who's applying this strategy, almost all of them already have jobs, which means if you apply this, you have no competition. So go out there and execute. Of
Can you say that again? I think that was good.
course, the great news of this is you're not competing against me in the market. I have a job,
Yeah.
right? Which means if you apply this, you won't have any competition because everyone who applies this rule has a job, almost all of them,
Yeah.
right? So that's the benefit
You're
of
working
doing it.
together. And it does, it's setting you up even in the business or company that you're working for as a team player. You didn't do this on your own. You're not getting this self-righteousness of this is look what I did and I earned this all on my own. You were working together with a team where they were helping to show you your faults and areas where you can improve. It's a I've never heard that. You're a wise young man.
Too kind.
You might not want to hear young, but still wise.
Ah, it's fine. It's fine. I like it. You know why I like being called young? Because it always reminds people who are listening, if I could do it, what's your excuse?
Hmm.
Right?
True story.
There you go.
Yeah, I read somewhere else. Don't let people forsake you because of your youth. So keep that with
You-
you.
You're so Canadian. I love it. You're too kind. You're so
What is
kind.
it in regardless of what industry people get into, what is the top character trait that you believe people should not morally just grab this thing, but just think about in their day-to-day work?
I would say for me, as if you're in a career, if that's what you mean, like in an actual job, I think the biggest mistake people make when they have a job is they don't think like an executive. So what does that mean? It doesn't matter what role you have. You could be an entry level admin, you could be a consultant. Always think like an executive. So whenever you do a deliverable, whenever you do something, always ask yourself, what does the person 3 levels above me, what would they do in this situation? And why would they do that? And the other part of that is to meet those executives for coffee. I see very little employees taking the initiative to meet people who have been in the company for 5, 10 years and just getting to know them. Those are the relationships that save you in recessionary periods. Those are the relationships that protect you from job loss. So I'd really encourage people to build relationships with people who are much more senior than you, so that they're on your that you're on their radar. They know you're thinking of them, and the more you talk to them, the more you condition your mind to become like them. So that's what I did when I started at IBM. I just met 7 executives for coffee, and then they all went, "Oh yeah, Brendan's the type of person we want to keep around." So
Was
then
there
when COVID hit, I was just sleeping around, just doing nothing, and life is good.
is there someone in your life that has influenced you to at least be on the path that you're on? Maybe it was your mom, but to have such a level head about yourself, to be so, I don't want to use the word inclusive, but to to be so level keeled. Just to Is there someone in your life, or is it just you learning on your own?
Yeah, I'm happy to talk about a person, but then I'll give you the real answer. So the person is definitely Scott Harrison. I have hundreds of heroes, but he's probably my biggest one. He's the CEO of Charity Water. I love his book. I love his work, and I love his quote, which is the goal is not to live forever, but rather create something that will. I think that was really powerful. But I'd say the biggest thing that influences me the most is time. I think what I realized is I'm not going to live for very long,
Mm-hmm.
not sick or anything, but I think there's anything I've learned from the people who are older than me, whether it's you or everyone else, is time is of the essence. And especially people, that's the biggest mistake people make in their 20s is they think they're going to live forever. And I'm a big fan of this idea of skipping the line. What is the insight that you know that I can just implement right now? Like, and I'll give you an example. That sounds crazy. That would sound crazy to anyone who's 24 listening to this. I literally listen to podcasts about divorce lawyers and how to avoid divorce, even if I'm not even in a relationship, let alone married.
That's funny.
I'm, I'm always thinking about what does the future me look like? How do
Mm-hmm.
I research someone who's 10 years ahead? Okay, this guy went to Korea. Oh, why did he go to Korea? Why didn't he stay in Canada? There's like poutine here. I don't understand. Ritz, I'm always
Yeah.
unpacking other people's lives so
Mm-hmm.
that I'm optimizing the remaining life. Whether I have 5 minutes left to live or 5 years or 50,
Mm-hmm.
I'm always optimizing to make sure I'm always making the right decisions so that when I die, the legacy I want to leave behind is left.
Speaking of legacy, Brendan, what is your overarching goal, whether it's for MasterTalk or for your career, if it's a different sort of corporate world position?
Yeah, I would say for me, it's fascinating how kind of my life goals have changed over time. It went from be a government employee to being a senior executive at a Fortune 500 to being a YouTuber, which is weird. But I'd say for me the biggest thing is I want to finish what Dale Carnegie started. Dale Carnegie, for those who don't know, is the author of How to Win Friends and Influence People. He was an incredible thought leader. He's a prophetic in the in the area of communication, public speaking. But since he didn't have the mediums of technology that we have today, like podcasting or being on a YouTube channel himself, he couldn't teach public speaking in the way it was supposed to be taught, which is like this, where you actually see me speak or you see me in a YouTube video. So I have this opportunity just because of how young I am and the time advantage to democratize the entire ship so that the next geniuses of our society can learn communication at a much younger age. Think next Elon Musk, but who's 15 right now, is probably a girl in Cambodia. Can get
Mm.
access to me today, learn communication, then when she's 25 or 30 and she's dominating and building billion-dollar companies, she can move the human race forward. So that's the goal.
It's a pretty good goal. I was I was probably trying to get $5 at 24. This- gotta pick up something. I don't know. Is there anything, Brendan, people don't understand about you that if they understood this, they would maybe appreciate the work that you're accomplishing?
Yeah, I think people think I'm nice. I think that's so wrong.
Think
You know,
that
people
you're
are
nice,
that I'm really nice. They're like, man, Brendan's like the nicest guy. Look at him.
but
He's
look at he's
so
actually cutthroat.
yeah, I'm
Is
pretty
it?
cutthroat. I'm pretty cutthroat. But I think the big one that people need to get is for me giving back is not about being some philanthropist, right? I
Mhm.
hate people call themselves philanthropists. It's just such a weird mentality. You
For
like
me,
become
it's
rich
just
and
a
then give.
hard name to pronounce. So
Yeah.
I like to give things.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. You went through the trouble of pronouncing my last name. Then you're like
No,
philanthropist.
yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, every time, you know, because I'm sure that people are going to call me this in 10 years when I'm donating more money, given MasterTalk successful. They're going to say, Brett is a philanthropist. Like he's such a go-giver. I'm just like, guys, like let's relax here. Like the point that we need to understand is like the only way we can become successful is because of the society that makes us successful. If I wasn't born in Canada, if my parents didn't immigrate to this country, if I didn't get the chance to have free education or pretty much free education in Canada, you know what that's about, and
Hmm.
do all and have all those opportunities, I would not be the person I am today. So the way that I see it is giving back is not something that I want to do. It's something I need to do. It's a moral
Hmm.
obligation for all of us as human beings. And it astounds me that most people don't see it that way. So I would say that's the big thing for me.
That so you're not nice, but you're a giver.
I'm not nice, but I see giving as a responsibility rather than something I should do.
Hmm. It's just part of who you are. You have a gratitude for all the things that you have.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Brenden, is there an adversity that you have faced in your life that if, and not so much to dive into your life, but an adversity that affects your work, but for the encouragement of others who are also facing adversity?
Yeah, of course. I mean, there's a bunch. I mean, there's a huge laundry list. I mean, dysfunctional family, alcoholic father, challenges with Master Talk, challenges getting the job in consulting. There's a lot of adversity we can go through, but I would say the big one for me is, or rather, a recommendation that I have for people is to ask more questions. You know, I think Tony Robbins puts it best. He says the quality of your life is solely determined by the quality of the questions, and I will add that you dare to ask yourself. Questions like, what are you pretending not to know? If you had all the money in the world, how would you spend your time? And if you died tomorrow, what would your funeral speech say about you?
Mm.
These are the questions that lead to insights. These are the insights that lead to truth. And this is the truth that you need to follow to live your life in the most authentic and real way before your life is over. So once you're really clear on those questions, regardless of the adversity, you'll realize that somebody else who's been through the same situation as you, because trust me, there's many, have still achieved what you wanted to achieve. And once you realize that by asking yourself a set of questions, I think that you can move forward regardless of the adversity.
You're right. And there are a lot of people that face adversity. I mean, everyone faces adversity. Your laundry list, my laundry list, everyone else's list. And it's good to know that people go through difficulties and they get through them. And they may face some other ones as well, but for people not to be too discouraged and say that they can't. You know, I heard someone say, you just got to try. You got to get up and you got to get going. And then the idea of this podcast of working, keeping going, even though it's difficult. Help with getting our team around you, some help is also a good idea. But knowing that a lot of people are out there that have gone through the same adversities. Brenden, is there anything else that we haven't touched upon that you might like to add about people and their work or some things you have experienced in your work?
No, that was amazing. It was a great summary. But I think the biggest thing I would say is really focus on the team player aspect of job searching. And not only will it be more fun and entertaining, you'll meet a lot of great friends and you will achieve what you're set out to achieve.
Brenden, how can people get in contact with you? I know MasterTalk is growing and doing very well. Is there some points of contact people can make with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So YouTube is definitely the best place. You can just type Master Talk in one word and you'll find me right there. And if you want to get in contact or anything like that, it's all on the YouTube channel.
One final question, young man, and that is, why do you work?
Hmm. That's a good question. and it's something I need to reflect on. But if I would give you my immediate answer right now, it would probably be because work is about contributing to society in a powerful way that hopefully, if you have a powerful enough gift, can change the very course of people's lives. And for me, that ends up being democratizing the world's information on communication. So for me, I work because it's important, because it serves other people, and makes me wealthy in the process.
Brenden Kumarasamy, business transformation consultant at IBM, founder of MasterTalk, and a young man making an impact on the world. I thank you for your time and I appreciate the work that you do.
Likewise.